Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. I'm continuing on with another episode from Season 7. This is Episode 18, The Attack. If you are enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. This episode was written by E.F. Wallengren and directed by Harry Harris. In this episode, Ike Godsey suffers a heart attack. The various different shots that you would see at the beginning of an episode, these sort of panning shots and whatnot, were stock shots, and I think a lot of them were things that had been shot on locations at times just so they had a whole bunch of different things that they could use. Like they wouldn't have gone out just to shoot this opening thing. But in this case, it was interesting to me because it seems to be an opening pan shot up in Fraser Park in the area that we might have used for the airplane landing in the air mailman or something like that. So it just struck me as a slightly different shot than what we normally saw in these opening pan shots. But moving along into the episode then, we have the return of Maud, who is back, and the lovely Marie Earle. Here, as we see Maud in Ike's store, Marie had a habit of closing her eyes when she spoke, and also because she wore those little glasses, if she tilted her head up, you will see here that you can see the reflections of the lights up in the rigging there. So it can become an issue with glasses trying to find ways, and actors have to be aware of either tilting glasses a certain way or not looking up, or just extra work to try and keep those glasses from reflecting the lights. Ike is under tremendous stress with the store. People are coming in and asking for things, particularly sugar. Maud keeps coming in asking for sugar, and he doesn't have it. Hasn't been delivered. Things are being rationed, and so he is getting hit from all sides by people wanting things that he doesn't have and then threatening to go and take their business to Rockfish. And then he has all these reports he needs to fill out to comply with all the rationing and stuff like that. The OPA, which was the Office of Price Administration, is on him. So we see the pressure building for Ike. At home, John has complained about Blue, who was found in the garden. He said, who's taking care of the mule? Nobody's caring for this mule anymore. It was John Boy's. And he said the mule isn't working. He's not doing anything, and they can't afford to be feeding an animal that isn't, in a sense, earning its keep. So it has to be sold. So Elizabeth and Jim Bob are grooming Blue to be sold. Clarence comes along. Now we see Clarence again. We had seen him once before in another episode. And he offers to buy Blue, and the price is $15, which is quite a lot of money at that point in time. And I'm not sure where Clarence got that kind of money from, but he pulls out a roll of bills and then seems to have some left over that he puts back in his pocket. So I thought that was interesting. The shelves are a mess, and the pressure has finally gotten to Ike, and we see him. He experiences this heart attack and then has to be rushed to the hospital, where David Spencer, Bob Woods, is back as Dr. Spencer. And of course, Mary Ellen is also at the hospital, and we are overseeing Ike's care at the hospital. To help out the Godseys, the Walton children decide that they are going to run the store while Corabeth is with Ike and while Ike is recovering. So they're going to take turns on different shifts to take care of the store. Feeling concerned because John is basically around the same age as Ike, Ben starts worrying that maybe John, who's working so hard all the time, might also have a heart attack. So he keeps trying to get John to, not do things, or Ben keeps offering to do things for him. And John's just a little like, it's fine, like it's all very peculiar to him, but Ben is quite worried. Because of the lack of sugar, John makes a suggestion that they take some of the sorghum that's growing wild all over the place and turn that into molasses, and that could replace some of the sugar demands. So Ben and Jim Bob decide that this is a project that they will take on. Corabeth is blaming herself. She feels like she has been too hard on Ike, and that she hasn't treated him properly, and that she has driven him to this heart attack. And now we also discover that her own father died of a heart attack. And so she is now wants to pamper Ike and doesn't want him working, wants him to sell the store and for them to move away someplace where he can just have a simple, calm life, and that she will be there to care for him. So this is the path that Corabeth is now pushing Ike along. Ben and Jim Bob are trying to turn this mill that they've created to make the molasses, and they try using Chance, but Chance won't pull the thing. And then Ben and Jim Bob are doing it while Elizabeth feeds it, and it's just not going well. And then Clarence comes along on Blue, and they decide that, it's Blue, they want to rent Blue, and he says no. And so then they say they will buy him back. And basically, Clarence says now the mule is going to cost $18. And ultimately, they agree to pay that because they need Blue. Ike is released from the hospital, but David has basically said that he needs to rest and relax, that his recovery will take some time. When they get back to the store, there are two men who have come by who are looking at buying the store, but they want to make all these changes. And basically Ike says that, no, the store isn't for sale, and just expresses to Corabeth how this is his life and that he would rather die doing what he loves, and that this is his legacy, this is his life. And Corabeth understands that and hands him back his apron that he wears in the store. So they're not going to leave, they're not going to move. And John convinces Ben that he would also rather be working than sitting around worrying about his death. He'd rather live. So it really is an episode about quality of life and what's important to people and those trade-offs that we make, and it's obviously a very personal decision for each person, but in this case, we see how that impacts the various different members of the family and Ike and Corabeth. When we have brought Ike back in Mary Ellen's blue van, when they get him out of the van, they just head to the store, and I noticed that the door was just kind of left open. And I understand that from a standpoint of the shot, but I also don't think that was necessarily something that would have been done. At that point, Ike is moving fine. I think they could have taken a second to close that van door. And someone else, another viewer, had mentioned at one point, why was it that people would just get out of the cars and leave the doors open? So some of it might have been sound related. If something was going on, the sound people might have said, could you not slam that door? And those doors could be hard to close without slamming. So I don't know what the decision was about. But I'm sure it was technically driven rather than reality driven. And sometimes I think those need to be just sort of balanced a bit so that it's not distracting. Of course, in this episode, we had Joe Conley and Ronnie Claire back as Ike and Corabeth, really carrying the main plot of this story. And then Bob Woods, he was credited as Christopher Woods in some of these episodes. I'm not sure why, but he did 8 episodes of the Waltons over from season 5 through season 7, with this being the last episode that we saw him in. Then Marie Earle, I did not realize she actually did 15 episodes, starting in season 1 with The Minstrel, and then she was in season 2, season 4, season 5, season 6. This also was the last episode where her character appeared in the Waltons. Marie Earle she was a favorite of Johnny Carson. He loved having her on, and she appeared on The Tonight Show in 16 episodes. She was born in 1889, and her first professional acting credits were from 1967, when she would have been 77 years old. In the film Fitzwilly, she was in that, as was Helen Cleve, who, of course, played Miss Mamie. And then both Marie and I appeared in the TV movie Valentine, which was directed by one of our Walton directors, Lee Phillips. And Valentine was a TV movie that was done. It was not a Walton movie, and starred Jack Albertson and Mary Martin. The last film work that Marie Earle did was in 1983, and she passed away in 1984 at the age of 95. We also had Lou Brown as Ed Whipple, and he did 4 episodes of The Waltons in season 1. The episode The Deed, he was the surveyor. In season 5, The Go-Getter, and season 6, The Recluse, he was Mr. Jarvis. And then here in The Attack, he was Ed Whipple. Stanley Grover was Bill Snyder, one of the people who came to try and buy the store, and he was a longtime companion of Ronnie Claire. I attended any number of events and things where Stanley was her escort. And I believe he was in another episode, but might have been uncredited. And then Kenny Marquis as Clarence, he did 2 episodes. He was in episode 6, Grandma Comes Home, and then here in season 7, The Attack. And like me, he was born in Santa Monica, California. Thank you for joining me for this look back at the season 7 episode, The Attack. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.